So, good evening, everybody, and special welcome, of course, to Brent Lessard and Tom Lambeau from Team rLoop. Gentlemen, you don't look half as exhausted as me, but I know you're working very hard these days. How are we doing?
Doing well, Sebastian. Thank you for having us.
I'm doing great, thank you.
And over there, of course, was Tom Lambeau, who's recovering from a harsh cold, I believe. So if his voice sounds extra dark, that is the cold and not at all the subject matter. We are, of course, here to talk and rekindle the conversation, which we haven't been doing it for a while. But you guys have been busy building, of course, the Hyperloop, which we're going to talk about, putting the pieces into place to actually bring forth the fifth mode of transport. But there's also a new thing going on, something quite different entirely. But when these two things meet, well, the world just might be very different soon. So starting off, before we get into all that, we might have some listeners that are not too familiar with Hyperloop or rLoop. So, gentlemen, could you give us a quick summary of what your organization is and what it is you're building?
Absolutely. So rLoop is a community of people from all around the world that wants to solve big challenges. We are people with various background, um, uh, various age, various sex, religion, etc. And we all coming together to challenge to work on big challenges for the humanity. One of the topic that of interest right now is the Hyperloop. So the Hyperloop is a new mode of transportation that's been pitched over the last years. The idea is to put some kind of wagon inside a tube, and you remove most of the air from the tube, and you shoot that wagon very high speed. So you have something that is kind of something that's as convenient as a train and as fast as a plane. The idea is to be able to connect the heart of different cities at very high speed. It allows you to shrink the time between places, allow you to do commute between big cities that was not possible before. And there is a good set of challenges to get there. It's a new technology. There is a lot of things that need to be done in order to happen, to become a reality, and that's where rLoop comes in. Bunch of volunteers that want to turn it into reality. So that's what we're doing with rLoop currently.
I understand. And of course, as we are recording this, we are only 1 or 2 days away, or rather after the fact that Sir Richard Branson of Virgin fame, the second most eccentric billionaire in the world, perhaps, after Elon Musk, of course, had announced that he indeed had invested an undisclosed but arguably enormous sum into, I don't necessarily want to say your competitor, but the conventional Hyperloop company called Hyperloop One is now Virgin Hyperloop One. And they're doing it the old school way. And they got lots of cool tech and lots of traction, yes. But you're doing it, building the Hyperloop, that is, in a very unconventional way. You're not going to the Sir Richard Bransons, though I'm sure you would welcome him into the rLoop if he asked, but you're not going to the original VCs of Silicon Valley to ask for help. You're doing it in a very different way. And I thought maybe, Brent, you could tell us more about what this new way of mobilizing people and mobilizing capital is. It's called a blockchain ICO, but what is it?
Sure. First, VH1, very exciting. I think you'll find anybody in rLoop, in our community, we're really passionate about developing the technology and seeing it implemented. And so, any progress that's made is a win for us. We're really excited to hear that Richard Branson's getting into the Hyperloop space. So as Tom had mentioned, our team is we were born a decentralized team. Philosophically, we're all about democratizing high technology and adopting the latest and greatest collaboration tools and methods that are available to us. And as is becoming more and more popular nowadays, the blockchain space is a very valuable tool we see to facilitate the work that we're doing as a decentralized organization. And so one of those aspects that it allows is the democratization of capital through what's commonly called an ICO, or an initial coin offering. Although what is more aptly called a token generation event in our case. Basically what we're wanting to do is encode the organization and the processes that we've developed over almost 3 years now, with a community of over 1,200 people now, onto the blockchain, and be able to sort of create a reputation or karma-like system through the use of these tokens. So members would be able to participate in the development of not only the Hyperloop technology, although that is our first project, but as Tom mentioned as well, we have our eyes on many different moonshot engineering projects. But one of the mechanisms that this token generation event will allow for us is to give the opportunity to anybody to be able to invest in the network. So where traditionally these opportunities would only be available to accredited investors, we can make them available to anybody, anywhere. The problem with the previous system was access to these sort of revolutionary technologies and getting in as an investor were only available to those people who are already wealthy, essentially. And the opportunity for those without those means were impossible. But now with this blockchain technology and us being capable of doing a token generation event, we can democratize capital, and we can make these revolutionary technologies available to anybody.
Wow. That is, of course, the whole topic of this conversation, and there's other content that we, 10x Labs, will have produced and that rLoop is producing that digs into the details of this. Of course, this is not an interview where we explain the mechanics of the blockchain per se, but it's, of course, the thing that has brought us all together. Because I think it's worth dwelling a little bit upon this. The blockchain has been with us since, say, 2008, when the Bitcoin emerged from it. Through mysterious origin stories, right? So there is that, but I like to think of the blockchain as kind of an equivalent to the internet or the World Wide Web, where Bitcoin was the first really useful utility built upon this new protocol. It's a thing that does a very limited value, but it's clearly there and used by a lot of people. Bitcoin is digital cash. And similar to email, it was perhaps the first utility of the blockchain. But now the blockchain has matured. It's called Ethereum, and there are also others. And novel use cases are cropping up. And I like to think of Ethereum and perhaps the ICO phenomenon in particular as kind of Netscape or Internet Explorer. Something that opens up and widens the utility of this new decentralized technology to a much, much wider group of people. You can do more things. But rLoop is the first hardware company, or at least a high engineering company, that is going onto the blockchain. And you are decentralized by DNA, of course, but it's still different than writing another app, right? There are some really cool ICOs that have raised a lot of money, providing a clear utility, but it's software. You are building not just hardware, but hardware that has never been built before. So how will you make use of the investment you receive? And apart from joining the network, why should people invest in your ICO and help your journey?
Tom, did you want to pitch in on that one, or do you want me to?
Go ahead, Brent.
Well, I think what we're really trying to do is embrace that on a philosophical level. The problems that we've identified to date in the innovation space is that there's been a notable decline in the investment in open research that has yielded some of our greatest discoveries, humanity's greatest discoveries. And there's plenty of studies that show a decline in government funding, which is usually more open-ended. Governments being able to invest in that open-ended research, but as well in private firm research, which also tends to be more narrow, targeted, and with a vision for a quick or short return. And so that's sort of one of the premises that we've identified and built into the network, the rLoop network. The other being, there's, and Tom can certainly attest to this, there's a massive global pool of talent that we've been able to just tap into for various reasons. We think there's a lot of people who have an interest or the experience or the education to apply to projects of this magnitude, who just don't have that opportunity in their regular lives, and there's various reasons for that as well.
One of the things that we really do with rLoop is, as Brent was touching on, is kind of bringing the power of innovation back to the people. There are lots of challenges and other just cool things around the world that needs to be solved or that can make things move forward on a humanity level. Hyperloop was one. New mode of transportation. How do we solve that? How do we move forward? You have things in medicine. You have things how, if you want to make more breakthrough in space, that has a lot of ramification on beneficiating Earth in the end. So there is a lot of things there where you have a lot of bright people, very bright people all around the world that wants to participate in that. They want to work on those problems. Because the place they are localized or other things, it might not be always possible for them to participate. So that's what we do with rLoop. We provide that one-stop shop where people can collaborate on innovative projects, and we are that everybody can come in kind of organization, and we offer a sandbox to the people where they can show what they can do. We connect them with the right people. We put a framework to work together. And when you can harvest all those people, all those idle brain over the world to turn it into something good, you can achieve really tremendous work together. I think one example I can show is just what we did with rLoop over the last year or so. We managed to propose a design to the SpaceX Hyperloop competition, get selected, and within a year from there, we produced 2 prototypes, and one of them was one of the winner of the SpaceX Hyperloop competition. And all of that using people that are distributed all around the world that I have never met in person, never exchanged a single email. That really shows what the internet can do nowadays, and really shows that there is a lot of people motivated to turn the world into a better place and put their brain and hands and whatever they have available into it to move forward. And that's what we try to do with rLoop. That's what we want to be able to do. Again, it's kind of innovation back to the people. How can we as a civilization work together to make great breakthrough for humanity?
And that is, of course, a super cool goal, very much one shared by 10x Labs, and something that similar to the Hyperloop, I suppose, a lot of people would refer to as indeed a pipe dream, because it's so difficult to conceive of the ability to mobilize, organize, incentivize over 1,000 people like you have done over an extended period of time in order to do really amazing stuff. A lot of people believe you need the idea of the company and a lot of things to achieve these things, because we've always had to rely on this. That's what new technology makes possible, for us to do more with less, basically. But I'd still like to dig into a little bit more about, because you've very clearly stated the purpose of rLoop, but the tactics, or rather how the network operates. You've been able to organize lots of different people over a long period of time to do amazing feats of engineering. But and I know this also relates to how you will also institutionalize this onto the blockchain, to the extent you can share it, because I know we're still working on the smart contract and all the details. But rLoop breaks down complex problems into manageable pieces that people can then go in and solve. That is the core part of the engine, if you will, of the network. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you're actually doing that, and how you would like to scale that and formalize it going forward using blockchain technology?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that, and Tom, feel free to jump in at any time. When we started rLoop, it was off of a Reddit thread on SpaceX. Somebody just said, we should form a team to participate in this Hyperloop competition, and we started. We were around 150 people, and it's a very creative time there, because even then there were no requirements from or guidance from SpaceX in terms of what we would be building for the competition. So we were kind of, it was very creative. People were just shooting out ideas, doing a lot of research on levitation methods, all sorts of stuff. And we sort of started to organically organize. But as time went on, we made it through the preliminary design briefing. Our numbers grew to a couple hundred people. We won the best non-student team award. Our numbers grew to 400 or 500 people. We had our design video hit #1 on Reddit on /r/all. Our numbers grew to like 800-900 people. And all the while we were building up the sort of knowledge base and the design, solidifying it towards what the pod would look like for the competition, and in parallel, thoughts on what our full-scale vision would be. And what we found as we went along, and now obviously, after the other competitions that we won, we're now up around 1,300 people in the community. As people join later and later, it became more and more difficult for them to get engaged, because they would have to go back to the beginning, follow the sort of design philosophy that led us up to that point. We're talking thousands of pages of documentation, simulations, designs, iterations. And now it was probably an idea of Tom's, but what we essentially decided to do was break down tasks or challenges or problems into as small and digestible a size as possible. So we were calling them micro tasks or bite-sized tasks. And the idea was that anybody could join at any point in time, not necessarily have to be entirely up to date on the latest specs or the history that led us to that point, but still be able to grab a task here or there on the different various teams that we had and be able to contribute in a meaningful way to the overall project. And what we found is people got a bite here and a bite there and then got that sense of accomplishment and got the sense of working within the team, it provided a greater incentive to get further engaged and to remain engaged over an extended period of time. So that was one of the big ways that we were able to mitigate the sort of bounce rate of members joining later while we were already kind of running. So, you know, beyond just that, there are components that we think are well suited to move on to the blockchain, so that we can encode these sorts of processes, have people be able to get involved and get engaged, and to, you know, we really want to grow and expand the network. We're at 1,300 now. You know, it's in our minds, it's you know, day one of rLoop's history kind of thing. So very, very early hatchling stage. And we really see the blockchain and smart contracts giving us that ability to grow and expand the network, and while remaining true to our, you know, the culture and the roots of rLoop and the community that we've developed to date.
I understand. And of course, there will be more details to be shared soon. The full white paper and the description of the token structure and everything. I know you are super eager to push it out, but of course things need to be right enough, which is why we're talking about it or around it here and now. But just looking a little bit forward, ICOs is something that really exploded this year, although the concept has been around for a while, and we're seeing lots of ideas that perhaps shouldn't get funded, trying the waters, and of course that's the state of a nascent ecosystem. We have to try things out, and there are opportunists as well as really solid entrepreneurs and everything in between. Assuming this space matures, assuming that fundraising through blockchain mechanics really becomes an established way of running an organization different to those of olden times, perhaps. What do you think this will enable people to do in a wider context? You want to democratize high technology and make radical breakthroughs happen to the benefit for humanity systematically. But looking at it from a like innovation-wide spectrum, how do you think the blockchain will change what we make and who gets to make it?
Tom, you want in on that, or do you want me to?
You can go ahead, Brent.
Okay. Well, I think we somewhat touched on it before, which is that, and Tom hit it on the head as well. The blockchain tech and ICOs being a way to democratize capital now allows or enables individuals to participate and drive in areas that they deem of importance or of interest to them. So, in the context of rLoop, of course, there's a massive need for government investment in R&D, and there's a place for that, and there's a need for private firms to invest in R&D as well. We've just identified a sort of gap there, where there's technologies that can greatly improve the livelihood of many around the world, or the health of the planet itself, or make us a spacefaring society, but they are risky, and they come with high time costs, and so become averse to those traditional investor groups. But we think the blockchain tech enables people who are interested and motivated to see humanity hit those goals. It gives them the opportunity to actively get involved, to actively put their minds behind it, or to actively put their resources behind it, whether it's financial or whether it's access to tools or equipment that might be limited in other capacities. Now, of course, when you start to see an influx of money in a space, there are malicious actors who will try to take advantage, and that's one of the reasons for the regulations that have existed for decades now. But there must be some balance where we can still protect the everyday investor, and I'm talking in the context of an ICO or token generation event, but still open up those options or those capabilities to them. We're not going to do away with. You're not going to do away with regulations or a legal framework for to protect those people, but we think enabling them to get involved is a huge step and a huge progress on its own for humanity. It's very exciting times, and there are some wonderful projects that are going to now be able to be developed because of it.
And I think Brent really, I really apologize. I think Brent worded it perfectly, and the blockchain really opens. It's kind of a new era of possibilities. So there are some visions of the things can be done with the blockchain. We are really kind of the internet in the very early days, where people had a lot of great ideas and all, and it actually went much beyond their initial ideas in terms of possibilities. And here we are the same too. There's a lot of things that can be done. So it really allows, again, the people, back to the people, the control of not the control, but the ability to participate will be, as Brent mentioned, resources, brain or whatever, and the token represent their participation to the thing, the work they're involved, the resource they've put, the appreciation they get for what they've done. It's that immutable proof of participation to the system, and the fact that giving that opportunity to people to be able to do that is quite powerful. It's when you have thousands of brains that can unite to solve something, it's quite amazing to see. And if we can use it for the good, to turn into actual things, developments, we need to use all the tools available. And when we started, we were fully decentralized. We were born decentralized, and so we had to find solutions and things that works to be able to survive and give us the win at the competition. And blockchain was one of the things along the way. We realized its power of it and how beneficial it could be for us by all the technologies that are based on it and the things we can make with it to really exponentialize what we want to do. So we have really exciting times ahead, and we're just at the beginning of it. I'm going to listen to this talk 5 years down the road, and we'll see all the wonderful things we'll be able to accomplish with that. It's really looking forward to it.
Certainly. I mean, I think we are very much at that kind of 1995 or 6, the internet is just emerging, and some nerd called Mark Andreessen is coding together a thing called Mosaic, because pictures would be nice to have on this new thing that's called the internet. And Yeah, few people could foresee Uber or Facebook or any of the current giants back then, and that's why it's so exciting. But another question before I let you guys get back. I mean, some of you have day jobs at NASA. You speak about empowering people, and you certainly have. But at the same time, rLoop consists of a bunch of really, really smart engineers who understand things about how to build levitating pods, and also can wrap their heads around this emergent, nascent technology called the blockchain. Most people, and some of them will be listening to this podcast, are super interested in impacting and changing the world, but their skill sets are not, to put it bluntly, as nerdy, perhaps. They might be good at a lot of other things. And I imagine building the Hyperloop going forward, building everything that such an endeavor needs, will require other skill sets than the ones that has brought rLoop this far. So will you be bringing on board other people that may not be from an engineering background, following what will hopefully be a very successful ICO? And how will you enable the less technically inclined but very motivated to take part of this future you're now building?
Absolutely. To your question, will we onboard other engineer? Absolutely, and we've already been since the beginning. That's really the beauty, I think, of that kind of decentralized organization as ours, and really giving kind of a glimpse of the future. It's that, everybody has a piece to the puzzle. Everybody has something they can contribute. Everybody has something they're good at or they really enjoy doing. And when you put all those pieces together, it becomes very powerful. Engineering is the thing you see first, because the final product is something that levitates, that hovers, that buzz, that sounds like go to high speed. And people think, mechanical, electrical, etc. But there is a lot of other things behind, everything you can think of. We have people that can just, we have artists, people that are good at doing sketches, logos, or just, putting some visions on words. We have people that just love other, working with people, organizing things. Would it be in human resources, in a public relation, or just helping manage people, solve conflict with people that are logistic genius, that can, how it's good to have one pod somewhere. We need to figure out how to bring it to the other side of the state. How do we do that seamlessly and all? And you have people that can just do things like that. Economists, lawyers, everything. Like there is always something you can do. And if there is not, we're offering you a blank page. So if there is not, and you want to contribute in an original way, there is certainly a possibility for that too. I really need to underline the mission support for all those engineers. You need to have a buzzing, well-oiled machine to work correctly to enable the work of the engineers. And there are so many pieces behind that you don't always see on camera or on the picture that are people that are making the thing happen. It's very important. So again, to your question, absolutely, we need those people. We need all those things, and we need the creativity. We need the people that don't think the same way you do. Otherwise, so it titiates a bit the imagination. It forces you to think of the big picture, and that's how you can make solutions that are resistant to change. It can get a good solution. So we need everybody, basically, every person. And I think just looking at the background of people we have at rLoop, we have people from high school to retired. We have people without a job, and we have CEOs. We have a lot of various religion, language, countries, and you put all of that together, you mix it up, and then you obtain rLoop, and we just need more, just in terms of people. I mean, we have a lot of people already who can make great things and all, and it's just it's that constant flux of people. It's really human. It's a human experience, a new type of experience also. It's just you're meeting a lot of other people, you connect. It's its own world. It really becomes its own world.
Yeah, we want everybody. There is no exclusivity here, and you will find that there are ways that you can employ your knowledge to the system, to rLoop, to help achieve those goals in whatever capacity. And it may not be what your education or your work experience may be. It might be something entirely different. Actually, what we encourage is people to participate where they are interested and passionate. So we've had engineers working in non-engineer or technical roles. For example, in the public relations side or the social media side, or graphic design side. And then we've had people with zero technical background, being creative and pitching ideas in those creative times that offer a different perspective to the engineers who might go, oh, wait a minute, you might be onto something here. We might be able to actually do it this way. Or that's an approach I hadn't thought about before. And so, one of the things that I was just recently reading, and I had to bring it up here on my phone because I'm terrible at remembering details, but there was a report in the Harvard Business Review about the science behind innovation. And they were looking at 3.5 million employees from over 150 companies and data stretching back 5 years. And unsurprisingly to us, they found there is a science to innovation, and some of the key aspects mimicked largely what we'd found over the past 2 or 3 years of doing this. But some of them relevant to this is first, scale, having more participants. You need a lot of participants. It's the wisdom of the crowd. A large mass of participants will always out-ideate a small group of smart people. So that's one. But two is the diversity in the crowd. It specifically says here, one of their outcomes was, you might think the most productive innovation system would be full of engineers or other problem solvers, but you'd be wrong. A successful system needs contributions from all over, especially people close to the front lines like sales, support workers, or people close to touch with manufacturing processes, for example. So there are many ways that people can participate and contribute, and we benefit from having a diverse set of people, set of eyes, set of minds focused on a particular problem.
And just to remind a bit, how we work at rLoop in terms of like people. When people join and register to join rLoop, there is no HR interview or things like that. The things we ask them to come with is motivation and willing to collaborate with other people. And when they arrive, we ask people to introduce themselves, so we learn a bit about them, and people give what they want to give, And we usually try to direct them in some direction, something that might be of interest. But we never put anyone in a case. We ask the person, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? And the funny thing is sometimes the evolution, as Brent has mentioned, of people, they are just tuned in a way, say, oh, well, I'm studying electronics, so I guess I should be, looking in the electronics team. And once they realize they can do whatever they want in rLoop, they say, well, actually, what? Screw that. My passion here is social media, or my passion here is human resources. And that's fully fine. That's great, because you'll have someone much more productive and much more, forget the English word, but just like feels more like they enjoy what they do by doing something they're passionate about. And that's what we want to provide to rLoop. It's kind of the Star Trek future of people working. It's like people do what they really want to do, and they thrive in that. And I think that brand quoting the Harvard article with the one with diversity in the number of people is definitely what we saw. Like I always like to say is that if you have 1,000 people working on a project on a problem, you either can see like pattern emerging, like yes, it seems like we want to go that direction, but you can have one guy saying, hey, that thing there, that could be an issue. We should look into that. Like we should be careful of that. And that's the power. If you have only two guys leading the thing there, you might miss those things. So power to the crowd, and do what you want to do. Just bring motivation and do it, and own your own life. And we provide you the pen and the paper, and the rest is yours.
And you can make whatever 16th chapel it is you're motivated to do, of course. Well, gentlemen, I believe that what you're describing, and we're all trying to find the right words for it because it is so new, but what you are describing, I believe, is the future of work. It is the future of how we will finance ourselves. Allegedly the robots will take all our jobs. I don't quite believe that, but in a future where we have to do what we want to do, and we have the means to organize to do so, I think that could be a vastly better tomorrow. And I think it's also a vision that is desperately needed around the world right now, an alternative that looks forward rather than being nostalgic about the past, but does so with credibility based on data, using technology where it's needed and not using it at all where you don't have to. You don't need a headquarters because you have Slack, but above all you have a method for organizing motivated people. I think that is quite remarkable, and that's why 10x Labs is so proud to be a launch partner in this campaign of yours. But back to the matter at hand. Along which time frame do you imagine that you will launch the actual ICO or the token generation event? And how can people get involved, learn more, read the white paper if they so wish, or just join the conversation on Reddit?
Yeah, so in terms of a timeline, it is a fairly new and emerging space. And as such, it's taking some time for the existing framework, legal and regulatory framework, to catch up with what's going on. And so, in the best interests of preserving the community and the work that we're doing, we don't want to rush anything. We want to make sure that we're in the right space legally, in the right jurisdiction, that will be welcoming of the type of work that we're wanting to do, and building the sort of community that we want to build. And so we certainly have been doing a lot of research, and we're in a lot of discussions, but to put a timeline on it now would probably be premature. Although obviously we wouldn't have talked about it if we didn't think that it was in an immediate future. Best way to stay up to date or in touch, first visiting our website, which is rloop.org, just the letter R and loop.org. It's Hyperloop without the hype. And you can sign up to our newsletter there, as well as checking in on our subreddit, our birthplace, which is reddit.com/rloop/r/rloop. Sorry.
And you can also find us on social media, the Twitter. If you look for rLoop on Twitter, and on the Hyperloop, on Twitter, and Facebook, rLoop. We post pictures and all the progress and other stuff there. So we invite you guys to join.
Yes, and
ask us questions.
Yes, of course. And I've also picked up on the fact that you guys are now hitting the road, doing the road show before the ICO, perhaps, and talking a lot of events. And of course, the pod is also traveling these days. So depending on where you are, you could actually come up and meet some rLoopers who are out there to talk about things that levitate, as well as how to put them onto the blockchain. Isn't that so?
Yeah, we have we have an event coming up this week in North Carolina. It is a closed private event, but we're meeting with several hundred engineers there. We're hosting a workshop and giving a keynote speech there. Obviously, we have members all around the world, so you may be seeing us popping up at different events wherever you may find yourself. Most recently, we've had a few in London, a few here in Canada. I think we have some coming up in New York and some down in the Bay Area in California. And then coming up in November, we will be at Autodesk University. That's in Las Vegas. I believe it's November 14th to the 16th. We will be in the Future of Making Things pavilion there with the second iteration of our prototype pod, which was an award-winning pod and achieved several firsts in the Hyperloop space as well in terms of testing with that pod. And then, there are a few different events coming up through November and December, some blockchain related, Ethereum related, and some engineering and technical related. I think there's a embedded systems talk coming up in California in December, a Future of Mobility one up here in Canada in the next month or so. So yeah, we're popping up. We're popping up all over the place right now.
That is super cool, and 10x Labs will of course contribute to cover this emerging narrative of the Hyperloop that goes onto the blockchain and does so much more in doing so, inventing the future of work perhaps. And we will also help out in outlining every step of the way, because I know there might be some listeners out there who think this is super cool but who has never touched a Bitcoin and might find it a bit daunting. We look forward to creating content, videos, texts, whatever it might take, that smooths that curve so that everybody, if they want to, can acquire the skill set necessary. It's not really that hard, it just might be new, necessary to join the campaign once it emerges, and really help facilitate everybody's interest in owning a piece of the Hyperloop and perhaps the future of work with it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking your time and sharing this with the listeners to the 10x Labs podcast. Do you have any final words or encouragement?
Future is now. That's pretty cheesy. No, just if you have any questions, feel free to come and ask us. You know, we are an engineer-based organization. We're really trying to create something so more people can join us and experience the Hyperloop thing. And it's quite a ride, and we really looking forward, having more people in discussions and all, and from all around the world. So please come ask us questions, come down to try to tackle some issues with us, meet some of our friends, meet some local Hyperloopers. You'll just, end of the day, you might just make a friend, just spend a week and make a friend, or just learn a few things, or you will teach us a few things also, which we are always eager for.
Yes, exciting times ahead. I think to just put a final point on something we were kind of pushing on before is if you ask yourself, what are you not doing today because you have to finance your life? The chances are you can come and do that at rLoop. We want people to be able to really have an outlet for their interests and their passions, and we want to make leave a better world for it. That's where we want to direct those efforts. So, like Tom said, best way to get involved, and Tom always says, is to communicate and get involved. So join us on our subreddit, visit our social media pages, and come out to those local events if they're in your area. Or if you want us to come to your area, let us know. We'd be happy to make those arrangements.
Well, gentlemen, to finish off, I think quoting legendary science fiction writer William Gibson is not out of place. The future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. And I believe that's exactly what you are trying to fix beyond just the Hyperloop itself. So keep on doing that, gentlemen. The rest of us will try to support that venture in any way we can. So again, thank you for your time. We'll be talking again soon, I hope.
Yeah, thank you, Sebastian.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Live long and prosper.
Serve the loop.
So the loop.